Thanks for subscribing to and downloading Plant Talk with your host, Fred Howard. Plant Talk is sponsored by HYGROWPONICS, your local indoor gardening supplier. HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. Now, here's your host, Fred Howard.
Oh my. 2 days of nearly sunny, a little bit of sun breaking through, etc. Kind of lightened my spirits, and lo and behold, this morning is severe clear, according to my pilot friends. I don't think a sunrise can get a whole lot prettier, certainly not this time of year. Really brightened my spirits. I didn't even discuss the drivers on the road with me. I felt so good. Mark gets a kick out of that. But at the same time, that is a good sign to us, and as though we need to think about plants along the way. I looked at the large body of water, which is a great big quarry, and then I looked at the river. Both were skiffed over with ice a little bit, even to the extent that there were some ducks being able to sit on that skiff of ice in one area. So it means that the ground can freeze here in the near future. So think about their plant, as we talked last week, the plants going into freezing at a moist level that will expand the water and block off significant deeper freezing, at least the rapidity of it, and that'll make our plants happy, and that'll make us even more happy come spring when they look good.
I'd have been a lot happier if the groundhog had a different verdict this week, but that's okay.
Yes, I heard several verdicts on that, and let's just say that it would seem as though we've got 6 more weeks of winter coming.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
we always do anyway.
You know, I've never kept track of whether that is indeed true or not, but I think it probably at least... just on the odds of shaking the dice or whatever, I have a hunch, comes pretty close most of the time.
I would think so. And actually, I saw the long-range forecast. We're back in the 50s this week in most parts of the state.
And that, with it, I think my car said 11 this morning. Back into the 50s seems like a really masterful change, at least for us. I don't know about the plants, the ducks sitting on water instead of ice and so on, but those things happen this time of year, and it brings me to a topic we'll discuss later in terms of ice loading and snow loading in trees. So those are the thoughts for the moment. Good morning, Ohio gardeners, and I don't know about you, but I'm on my second half a cup of coffee. I hope you will join us.
Yeah, I just made another pot, too, so I think we're all set with that. Sitting alongside Fred Howard, I am Mark Noose in our Plant Talk studios. If you have a question or comment this morning, you'd like to join the conversation, just pick up the phone, give us a call, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. That's 1-866-752-6882. Fred, seeing much in color?
Yes, but I have to hunt for it.
Yeah.
It may be a cardinal or a blue jay or the bicolor, the sharp indication of bicolor on a chickadee, etc. But yes, there is some color, Mark, and it's the tinge of frost on the remaining leaves of the oak leaf hydrangea this morning. Now, you got to really hunt for that. And at the normal 60 or 70 feet of my view of that plant, I had to get a little closer. And it just happened that the sun wasn't up quite yet, but there was enough bright light behind the leaf that I could see the little fuzzy spurs of ice crystals, I guess you'd say, on the edge of the leaf. So when you got to hunt for it that hard, you won't see it at 35 miles an hour, but a walk in the garden, and you can.
Once again, our toll-free number, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. We're just getting started. Fred's Plant of the Week is next. We're glad you joined us. Stick around.
With winter weather here, it's time to start your indoor gardening with the right supplies and gardening expertise from HYGROWPONICS in Hilliard. Whether you're a first-time gardener or a lifelong enthusiast, they're here to help you. HYGROWPONICS offers eco-friendly and organic equipment and advice to make your indoor gardening a success. Find out more on their website, HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. That's HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with links on their website. HYGROWPONICS, your local gardening supplier.
And welcome back to the program. Fred, your plant of the week.
Well, the plant of the week, Mark, is one that I hope people can enjoy. Now, the color of the leaf is pretty much gone. It has gone from kind of a rugged, soft, even maybe on the dull side of green, on a leaf that's anywhere up to 8 inches long and 2, possibly 3 inches wide, kind of a rough surface. It is called, now, hang on, be ready to write this down, viburnum, which is easy, retidiphyloides. Now try spelling that one. But let's go to its varietal name of Allegheny. That's the one you want to remember. It is a plant that is indeed deciduous or losing its leaves in the course of the winter. But the plant still is foliated by maybe even half, depending on where you see it. Where it's protected a little bit, there's probably at least half the leaves still on it. Out in the wind, etc., when it hits those gusts of 15, 20, 30 miles an hour, it can have knocked the leaves off. But the plant is one that will carry its leaf pretty much on through the winter. I consider it a semi-evergreen. It is extremely cold tolerant. I don't think Ohio will ever get cold enough to hurt it when it will grow in Minnesota. It's a fairly fast grower. Now, I don't mean really speedy, but in a period of 13 years, it can hit 8 or more feet tall. It's capable of getting up even to 10 or 12 if you leave it alone over a long period of time. It can be, and this is one of the things I enjoy, what I call very competitive. Under evergreens that have long since headed up, bottom branches have died naturally and so on. Now you have to jeopardize the bigger evergreens or other plants if you put them in front of. But if you dig a hole that is adequate and appropriate for that size of root ball, then you won't be hurting enough of the roots of the plants you're putting it in front of, where I've seen it as an underplant along driveways and the backyards and people that want to block off, let's just say an area where it will do that in the summertime quite nicely up to that point of at least 8 feet tall, and then possibly a little bit more than that, and it will compete with the plants you put it in. Now, under those conditions, you do have to treat them as a new plant for at least 3 years because the older plant is going to compete quite heavily. But in any event, the viburnum Allegheny is quite capable of let's just say, handling those situations. But be sure then, when you put any plant into competition with competition with an older, big old, heavy-rooted plant, be sure you treat it kindly.
And that's Fred's Plant of the Week. And let's go to the phone lines now at 1-866-PLANT-TALK. And Penny's on the line with us. Good morning, Penny. How can we help you out?
Yes. About 3 years ago, a patch of wild strawberries grew in the middle of my grass, and I tried hand-pulling it 1 year, and then the next year I tried Roundup, which killed the grass, but the plant still lived. So I wondered, how can I get rid of them? Persistence.
Now, I say that, and I don't mean it as a joke. Wild strawberry can be quite competitive, as we were just talking about the viburnum. Roundup is a disaster to grass, and it is almost a sure kill. That is it's unfortunate that you didn't realize the limits. But anyhow, let's hope that you can reestablish grass in there. Then I'm going to recommend the same kind of thing that we do with violets and the like. Quite frequently, they will die by putting on an application of selective weed control, broadleaf weed control, in the fall, even to the extent of maybe 2 applications 2-3 weeks apart, starting in September and then again one in the middle of October and so on. That the plant probably will not look dead at that point, but it may have imbibed enough of the weed killer that over the course of a tough winter plus the weed killer, it won't show up again in the spring. If it does show up again in the spring, while that foliage is young and tender, it will it'll pull in more of the weed killer, so give it what I'll call that third shot, and you should start to get control. But they have seeded, and you will probably have to watch out for second and or third generation plants. But with a selective weed killer and let's just say, properly mixed and so on, 2 or 3 hits should take care of it, especially if you do it in the fall.
Okay. Do you have a particular brand?
Well, yes, I have to be a little partial, but the Scott's product, Scott's and Miracle Grow, they're stronger selective weed killer, and then there's Bonide has a lawn weed killer that is really very, very acceptable. Also, I can't say that I've set up a scientific choice of product, that is, then the use of the products, but I see pretty much equal results between the two. So either the Bonide or the Miracle Grow type of thing, in terms of selective weed killer, should do the job.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling, Penny.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
And it was nice to talk to Penny this morning. Let's go to Dan in Zanesville. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, guys. Nice day here in Zanesville.
Good. Same here.
Hey, question. I've got some small gnats in some of my indoor plants, and I was wondering if you could recommend an insecticide soap or maybe a recipe to making that soap and some other ideas on how to control that the gnats in the...
They are a nuisance, as you know, Dan. They're tough to kill. I would start with just no more than 1/8 of an inch of the soil scraped off the top of that whole pot. You won't be getting into roots, at least not enough to be damaging, I would hope. That will take off some of the egg-laying area, etc., and will, let's just say, be of major help. Then, I'm going to say that the horticultural soaps, and then some of the very let's just say the chemistry has been taken to the next step. Some of the oils. Now, I would tell you on oils, some plants are going to be vulnerable even to the most highly refined of the oils. But so you try a couple of leaves and a stem in, I'll call it the back of the plant, just to be sure you don't get into an oil kill, even, as I say, with the most highly refined. Then as soaps go, I know people that have used dish soap, a teaspoonful in a quart or even a gallon seems to do the job. There are, of course, the commercial grades of soap. I think you find that scraping off that top and then putting a new surface down, for that matter, and then repetition is the word I'm reaching for. Repetition will be a key. They do, of course, lay eggs in the tiniest of crevices, so you want to spray to the point of runoff, even if you need, if it's possible, even if you need to see to it on a warmish day, the garage is warm enough, take it out there and spray it to the point of runoff. Then as soon as it dries or stops dripping, back in. Be persistent is the main thing, Dan, because those little guys drive greenhouse people nuts. That I think that's about the best I can say on air.
Okay, well, thank you, and I appreciate you guys being out there to help us.
Thank you. Happy to do so.
And Dan, always good to hear from Dan over in Zanesville again. Thanks so much for calling. Once again, our toll-free number, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. That's 1-866-752-6882. More from Fred up next.
With winter weather here, it's time to start your indoor gardening with the right supplies and gardening expertise from HYGROWPONICS in Hilliard. Whether you're a first-time gardener or a lifelong enthusiast, they're here to help you. HYGROWPONICS offers eco-friendly and organic equipment and advice to make your indoor gardening a success. Find out more on their website, HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. That's HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with links on their website. HYGROWPONICS, your local gardening supplier.
And welcome back to the program. Mark Neuse alongside Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman. And Fred, let's go back to the phone lines and speak to Art in... Well, it seems like we've lost Art from New Philadelphia. Let's try the other line here. Good morning. You're on Plant Talk. Who's this?
Yes, this is Art.
Okay.
Hey, we got you, Art. How you doing?
Yeah. Good. How about yourself?
We're doing fine. When the sun's up like this on a February morning, we've got to be good. And both of us are in a good humor. Both of us had a good night's sleep. So we're here to do what we can for you. What can we help you with, Art?
I got a few questions.
Okay.
Crabgrass preventer, put that down, first sign of dandelions. And when would you put GrubX and weed and feed down, and what order and when?
Okay, let's go with the thought of the crabgrass control, dandelion time, or even just before that, if you can kind of anticipate. When you do that, you're building a barrier in the soil that once it gets either a touch of snow or rain, that the material breaks down and makes a barrier in the soil through which the crabgrass seeds can't germinate. Okay, so we don't want to break that barrier after you've put down the other material. So any heavy raking, any core aeration, that kind of thing should be done. Now then, the timing on the beetles, grubs is what I'm trying to say. Timing on the grubs is very different, and it will. Well, let's just say my memory is slightly faded on that, but it's going to be later in the season, and you want to put it on and water it down in, because, again, you're trying to build a barrier. Timing on that is going to be on the container, and unfortunately, I'm not certain enough in my memory to give you a good clue on that. Then there was a third thing you asked about.
Yes, weed and feed.
Oh, weed and feed. Anytime that there is a living weed. Now, let's go with the division of the plant world in terms of grass being one kind of physiology and weeds being broadleafed and being another. So anytime you get a dandelion, a buckhorn, a violet, and on, anything of those needs, as soon as you see them, and, well, let's just say that means it's the germination time. And if you wanted to wait after you've seen the very first of them, you wait maybe as much as 2 weeks, maybe not quite so much, until more have germinated, because the weed killer must go on the foliage, let's just say intake through the foliage, and then kills the root and the top dies. So you can use weed and feed at regular intervals. And if you have a particular weed problem, you can use a weed killer independent, use weed and feed to double up on your weed problem, and then not get into too much fertilizer, so you can kind of spread that one out, I'm going to say as per need. Now, does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because you have three different timings. Two of them are for prevention for all intents and purposes, and then the weed and feed is after the fact, and having put down a crabgrass control, you're going to stop a little bit of the germination of some other things, so that will be of modest help, very modest. But then any living plant, well, no, not a dormant plant. A plant that has its foliage on it is then highly susceptible to weed controls because it goes on that fresh foliage. The cuticle on the younger foliage is not as dense as having been weather beaten by the sun and so on. So the sooner you get on that without going preceding the germination or even following up, put on, for example, a weed and feed for the first application, assuming it's in that roughly 8-week period after you have fertilized. Then go to a straight weed killer, catch them then. Then if it's necessary, go with a second application of weed killer. And on weed killers, I have a personal preference, I guess you put it, as I will use a water-soluble liquid application weed killer because I think I can get more thorough coverage. I can, so to speak, see my target and deal with it as opposed to a dry chemical. That's just my preference. Sometimes you can use both, but the timing is the key on all three of those things. And then, except the real world, nothing's 100%. Unfortunately. But that's the truth, Art.
And, Art, thanks so much for the call this morning, and let's go back to the phone lines. Chris is on with us. Good morning, Chris.
Hey, good morning, guys. Good morning, Fred. Hey, I had a question for you guys. I have an artificial pond that's a good moderate size, and we live near a farm as well. So it's kind of placed near the field in the back there as well. I have a weeping willow tree, because it looks really nice on the edge of the pond there. Really helps, corner the whole scenery there.
Right.
But the problem is the roots of the weeping willow are kind of getting into the field and getting into the tile. So we have to dig that up. We were trying to think of what would be a good alternative that's still going to look good in that setting, but not run the risk of getting into the pond, breaking that liner or getting out in the field. So maybe a smaller root, base, but still gives that good look. We were considering some like big burning bushes, but if there's any trees or anything else, what you'd recommend in that setting.
Well, because I think there's only one place for weeping willow, and that's where you do have it, and yet it's giving you trouble. Do you plow near that tree?
The fields worked by that tree, so they do definitely work the grounds. And we were surprised it made it out to that far extension because it's probably a good, 50, 100 foot from it. But yeah, it sure is getting out there. So.
Well, I can appreciate that 50 to 100. 100 is kind of stretching it. 50, I don't think there's any question about it. And then clogging tile they will do, which means it is the natural enemy. One remedy would be to cut the tree down, kill it, so to speak, plant another young one, let it grow until it becomes, established and problematic, and then continue this, because weeping willow has its own character. Edge of a pond is just magnificent, but as you have run into, do you have, in terms of your farm equipment, anything that will go deep, down 15, 18 inches?
Yeah, we could definitely, do something like that.
Okay, on the field side, now it won't help your tile, but on the field side, if you can, go in through and just simply get down as deep as you can with the implement of choice, without getting into your tile, of course, and just cut the darn things. And you will have to do this every year, because a full-fledged weeping willow is going to put out root practically by inches per week, so it just keeps on keeping on.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm prejudiced toward weeping willow negatively when they're wherever they shouldn't be. In a pond, they are magnificent. I guess what I'm telling you is I can't think of a good alternative at this point. There are other plants that would grow in there, as long as you stay enough above the water line of the pond. There are several maples that will handle it, including the beauty of the red maple. I'm thinking the grace of the tree, though. There's just nothing that does what the weeping willow will do. But then there are many other plants. I'm thinking of serviceberry. There is one serviceberry, and you'll have to hunt for it because it's not necessarily always on the market. It only gets about 6, 7 feet tall. It is a good pond edge plant. I think of a plant in my own backyard. The Joe Pye weed is a plant that grows at river's edge, water's edge, and I would assume would work just above the water line of a pond. I don't think those things would be as, nasty about the root. I can't think of anything else right off the top of my head other than the willow family.
Now, do you have to dig also to kind of protect the lining of your pond if that's going to be near that? If it's not a natural pond and it does have a lining, will the willow tree run the risk of getting into that as well? Because then that could ruin the whole pond too. Yes,
it can happen. Let me tell you how offensive those things can be. And that is a fellow that it happened to be in one of our urban areas that has rules against those and some others. The inspectors were there in the area for other reasons. They saw his willows. They were still relatively young. They left him a memo, and then that is in the door, and then wrote him a letter. You shall remove those by such and such. If you do not, we will fine you and charge you for removing them. and it went on to read like, you better get this done. And that's how offensive they can be. They can work into a 1/16 of an inch of a break under the lining of the pond. I would tell you that the weeping willow, I wasn't listening close enough when you said artificial pond. If it has a liner, I would just plain stay away from that willow family. Other plants, however, are not necessarily as invasive.
And thanks so much for your call, Chris. We appreciate it. You know, if you get some time this week, check out our website, which is planttalkradio.com. You can also go to iTunes and sign up to receive our podcasts every week or listen to our previous shows on planttalkradio.com. We'd also encourage you to go on and check out our Facebook page. We get a lot of fun stuff on there during the week. More from Fred coming up next on Plant Talk. Our toll-free number, 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's.
With winter weather here, it's time to start your indoor gardening with the right supplies and gardening expertise from HYGROWPONICS in New Hilliard. Whether you're a first-time gardener or a lifelong enthusiast, they're here to help you. HYGROWPONICS offers eco-friendly and organic equipment and advice to make your indoor gardening a success. Find out more on their website, HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. That's HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with links on their website. HYGROWPONICS, your local gardening supplier.
And welcome back to the program. Mark News here alongside Fred Howard, the Ohio Nurseryman. And back to the phone lines we go at 1-866-PLANT-TALK. And Jim is online with us. Hi, Jim.
Hello there.
Good morning. How can we help you, Jim?
I have a neighbor whose lawn is sharing morning glory with me.
Uh-huh.
I want to say, too, though, off the subject, I have a daughter that has taken some courses from you in the past and admires your teaching ability and your knowledge.
Wonderful.
I just want people to know that you do other things but tell us wisdom on the radio.
Yes. Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Now.
Well, the morning glory is making a passionate enemy out of me. I wonder what I might do to quell its progress.
Well, now, is this bindweed with a little white flower, or is it true morning glory?
I'm not sure.
Okay. If it's bindweed, it will have an arrowhead hunting point size of leaf that is actually looking a bit like an arrowhead. It will be a finer, thinner stem, and the flowers will be probably not over 1.5 inches long, maybe 1 inch wide. They're white, they're kind of a creamy white, and that is a perennial. That's the part that makes it nasty. The regular morning glory does flower, does then fruit, but it can be handled more as an annual.
Okay.
Now, how to explain? On the perennial, can you tell, is it literally growing on or in the ground and popping up on your side, or does it look like little seedlings in the spring? Tough question, I know.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm visually impaired. My daughter does a lot of the work for me.
Okay.
And she says it's morning glory, but she's not here, and I can't pick her brain right now.
Well, and that's okay, because let's just go with both thoughts. And I'm not an expert on this, but if it is bindweed that looks much like morning glory, then you have to go after it annually and even semi-annually and maybe more often. You would treat it with a regular weed killer that is, again, the two that I mentioned earlier that will both be absorbed, and it'll kill the ones on your side. Now, you're going to have to be careful in terms of neighbors and borders. I don't recommend you try to reach across the fence and take his out also, unless you have a written agreement to do so. Now,
right.
And that one you just simply have to keep spraying. One of the things that I recommend to people when there are relatively few coming up under a given plant, reach down in, pull the devil out, cut it off at so far above the ground, then note where you have been. Because as soon as it sprouts leaves, young, tender leaves, then you apply the weed killer again a couple, 3 times. And it's just a repetitious thing all the way through. On the morning glory, I would think something like preen, which is a preventive, a seed germination preventive.
Right.
I'm hoping that you could get enough of that down properly to stop the germination of the morning glory. Now, I've never actually done that. I've only grown morning glory for a short time. I know it can repeat itself, but I find that I have to keep buying seeds so they're viable. I don't know how to help you on that one for sure, Jim. Try to separate which one it is, and then go after both, because either one will succumb eventually to use of weed killer. But the actual morning glory that starts over from seed each year will be, let's just say, easier to discourage. Bindweed is I'll call it a bear.
Well, Jim, good luck with your problem there. We appreciate the call this morning. Nice to talk to Jim. And, Fred, we did get some email questions this week. You can always email your questions in. It's just fred@planttalkradio.com, or go to our website, planttalkradio.com, and click on the Ask Fred button. Donna wrote in, and she says, I would love to have a Crimson Queen Japanese maple, but the only spot I have for one is in full sun. Now, I read online that it prefers filtered sun or just full sun in the morning. Mm-hmm. Is it worth a try in the full sun?
I'm going to tell her yes.
Depending upon the price.
Well, that's right. And that is a major challenge, because you don't have to have a very big plant to be quite pricey in Japanese maples. The one she likes is a beautiful plant. It doesn't have such finely cut leaves. It's just more noted for its color. And the advantage to that is going to be that the sun will tend to burn those finer points on the real finely cut Japanese maples. Now, it will also burn them on the Crimson Queen if we have too much droughty weather, etc. I have found, and it might be an accident, and it's again a kind of a one of a kind thing, but I have found that about 1.5 inches or so mulch. I don't like to get too deep on anything for that matter, but be sure to have 1.5 inches or so of mulch over the roots, so the roots toward the surface can continue to function. They stay a little cooler, a little less burning. Well, set your own price range, but to start with a small one, and they will grow fairly well if they grow at all. I think you'll have luck based on some things I've done. However, expect that by August, September, it's going to burn a little. So give it a shot. Bear in mind you could lose, so watch your dollars, but I would say go for it.
And more from Plant Talk coming up next. Stick around.
With winter weather here, it's time to start your indoor gardening with the right supplies and gardening expertise from HYGROWPONICS in Hilliard. Whether you're a first-time gardener or a lifelong enthusiast, they're here to help you. HYGROWPONICS offers eco-friendly and organic equipment and advice to make your indoor gardening a success. Find out more on their website, HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. That's HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with links on their website. HYGROWPONICS, your local gardening supplier.
And welcome back to the program. I know, Fred, you were talking earlier, we had a question about grub control, and you wanted to expand a little on the timing on grub control.
Yes. They are rascals, and let me just say that they're going to be eating on the roots of your grass in the spring. But the lawn is growing very rampantly because of its natural cycle, and you don't often notice the grub damage until they have already eaten the roots back or continue to later in the season, and then it shows up as dead lawn. So most grub controls are going to be handled March, April is when you get the grubs that are actually actively eating, We hope you get them. And then from April to June in the pupa stage, where they have filled their tummies and gone into a semi-dormancy, I like the March to April period. And again, we're talking about a barrier. It depends on whose product, but by and large, most of them you apply and then water them in so they get down into the feeding area of the grubs. Now, a fresher growing lawn, one that's been aerated, one that's been slice seeded, whatever the case may be, where the grasses are not, they have not built up the byproduct of all those dead crowns and things down in there. The grub control will get down through quicker, better, etc., and a much better kill. So if your lawn is full of thatch, really, really heavy thatch, you simply have to water more thoroughly, right in combination perhaps with rains, etc., to be sure and get the material down through all that thatch to the grub's eating area. And I like that March-April period predominantly. But then clear up through June, and it depends then on which chemical you're using, they can be worked on and killed. And like I say, you don't notice it that they're eating so much in the spring, but you'll notice it by August or September.
Yeah, and then I guess by June they turn into adult beetles, yes. So that then it's a little late to treat them that way.
Zapping against your bug lights and onto your porch lights and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then Fred's out doing the bug dance.
Well, or the badminton racket. And, well, anyhow.
Or as we used to say, or your friend used to tell you, brick them.
Brick them.
Take two bricks, and, well, yes. you can see the rest. Speaking of beetles, Hank wrote in. He says he had a pretty bad beetle infestation eating his flowers last year. Mm-hmm. And he says he'd like to use some sort of organic to get rid of them. And he says that he heard that hot pepper flakes or a hot pepper spray might do it. I know you've got your own ideas about what might help out organically.
Well, yes, I do, and I try to. I don't discourage home brews, so to speak. Most are not damaging, and some are very effective. I've heard of the pepper spray. I've never used it, but along came Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. I'll get that out.
Easy to use, not easy to say.
That's right. That's right. It is an organic. It's listed as such through the government processes and so on. It was the material. Let's put it this way: I'm going to call it brewery. It was a
distillery.
Distillery.
Yeah.
People kept noticing that there were no bugs in the brewery or distillery after it had been abandoned and so on. Well, okay, why? Those that are savvy started hunting for, and they found, I don't know whether it's a bacterium or what it is, I'm not going to try to get into that, but it was determined to be the reason it became a natural enemy to the insects, and I'm assuming that it's broader than just beetles. But that is registered as an organic, and I would say that it's probably one of the best. I can't, off the top of my head, mention. I don't know other organics right off the top of my head. There are some. Most chemical companies have at least gone toward having a second side to their business for those who like to go organic, but I can't name them all right now.
Ben wrote in this week. He says he purchased an older home where the previous owner wasn't able to take care of the boxwoods. There were a lot of dead woods and termite damage. They were overgrown. He says he removed the dead wood, thinned back, cut the shrubs. He's wondering if there's a fertilizer or anything he could use to help perk these up and bring them back to health this year.
Well, the answer is yes, but cautious. Boxwood, first of all, they are or tend to be high-rooted. Even to the extent that the roots will come up into the mulch. So, therefore, don't go scouring the mulch off. I would actually add carefully maybe an extra half an inch, or a full 2 inches that will settle down if they are not mulched. Then, as to fertilizer, I prefer to use a slow reaction fertilizer on them. I have never burned them, but I know that if you go with something too strong, it could be damaging. Now, you might try a double application, and that would be with a slow-release fertilizer applied at X amount per square feet. That would be one thing. You could perhaps mix half-strength water-soluble fertilizer and pour it on around them, and this would be not at the trunk necessarily. If these are old plants, stay out 2.5 or more feet on either side. I would make it a general application, but you could just dress it down both sides.
And Fred's to-do list is up next on Plant Talk. Stick around.
With winter weather here, it's time to start your indoor gardening with the right supplies and gardening expertise from HYGROWPONICS in Hilliard. Whether you're a first-time gardener or a lifelong enthusiast, they're here to help you. HYGROWPONICS offers eco-friendly and organic equipment and advice to make your indoor gardening a success. Find out more on their website, HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. That's HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. You can also find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with links on their website. HYGROWPONICS, your local gardening supplier.
All right, things to do. Number one, we spoke just a moment ago about mulching. Do not go heavy at this point in time. Wait until spring cleanup is done. But if there is no mulch around things like your Japanese maples, boxwoods we just talked about, I would be sure there is at least some. Now, your neighbors will know you're nuts. That's okay. If you have dry spots on a mound or under overhangs, be sure and water those plants at this point. Make notes from the garden shows and things you visit on the combinations you like, colors you like, character of trees, and so on. Magazines will also help. And then it's just a matter of kicking back, get the fire roaring, and let the calluses dissipate on your hands for another few weeks, and then back at it. It's just that time of year where we get a chance. We should take that chance to kick back, but then do some homework. Catalogs will be out. Well, they're probably already out in many cases. A nice warm fire, light over your shoulder, and you can study those catalogs quite nicely. That really is, it's not hard on the energy, it's not hard on the joints, and it's fun to do.
And feed the birds.
Feed the birds.
And we'll see you again next week for another edition of Plant Talk Radio.
Plant Talk has been sponsored by HYGROWPONICS, your local indoor gardening supplier. Visit their website, HYGROWPONICSOhio.com. If you have a question for Fred for a future show, go to our Facebook page and ask away. We value your comments about the show, so please tell us what you think by writing a review on iTunes. This helps others find out about Plant Talk. You can find out more about Plant Talk on our website at planttalkradio.com.